We've been discussing so far the backlash that has been faced by Maldivian tourism after what their government has been up to. As we speak, President Muizu has been, signing agreement after agreement in China, calling them their most valuable ally and closest friend, looking for trade, investment, tourism, you name it, he's asked for it. We know the CV of the present establishment in the Maldives. It is as anti-India as you can perceive it to be. The entire electoral campaign was based on rallies saying India out. But when they say India out, what they were hoping that they could keep the Indian tourists in, because that's about $300-400 million of revenue that they were taking from the Indians every year, that they could keep the money from the tourists but do everything else. So what does India out really mean? What has Muizzu done that has a much deeper security implication? Because it is one thing to call us names and then face your comeuppance. It is yet another thing to take action steps that will clearly and identifiably undermine India's security interests right off its shores. So let's be clear on this. If the Chinese think that they are now going to be building a secret submarine base in the Maldives, well, they better have another thing coming rather soon. So now the level of escalation is in the court of Malé. The establishment there needs to now decide whether they now want to have an antagonistic, hostile relationship with India. Now, Muizzu, after running his India out campaign, what's he done? Number one, in the Indian Navy has been conducting hydrographic studies in the Maldivian waters. Hydrographic studies are basically doing sonar mapping of the shifting sands, of the channels, what is the depth of the oceans. You can call it ocean floor mapping. Muizzu has come and said that this agreement will not be renewed and the Maldivians will conduct their own hydrographic studies. They don't have the capacity to do it, but you can assume that they can get the capacity from elsewhere, perhaps the Chinese. So number one, the hydrographic agreement with the Indian Navy is not going to be renewed. Number two, there were 70 Indian personnel who were operating radar and sonar stations and other facilities in the Maldives. 70, that's it. So these were the Indian operatives operating in the Maldives. They're not armed personnel. These are radar operators. They are being kicked out. So that's the number two step. Number three, there was a meeting that was held in Sri Lanka very recently with the NSAs of Sri Lanka, Mauritius, India and the Maldives were to be meeting. The Maldivian NSA decided that they're not going to attend. Number four, all the non-public pacts that have been signed, arrangements, agreements, security pacts that are not known publicly, both recently and deep in the past. Remember, there was a time when there was a coup in the Maldives and Indian security forces were requested to re-establish order. All of these are being put under review by the Muizzu government. Now, we don't know what the conversations he's actually had with the Chinese. They, of course, talked about trade and tourism and investment. But you can well imagine that he's in China for 5 days, not just to talk about trade and tourism. The Chinese are going to want something for the big checks they are going to sign. So what do the Chinese want? They've already got a port under Chinese operation in Sri Lanka called Hanbantota. The Colombo city port is also under Chinese operation. Gwadar in Pakistan is also already under Chinese operation. There's already a Chinese base in Djibouti, and you know one that is being built in Myanmar. The objective is the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. The Chinese need a footprint here. Now, in the past, there have been more than credible conversations of the Chinese looking to build a permanent naval presence, a resupply base at the very least, at the very worst, a submarine resupply base in the Maldives. Any such move is a direct threat hostile intent to India's security as a sovereign country. So like I said, the ball is in the Maldivian court of President Muizu. You've taken a path. How far do you want to go up that path? And if you choose to antagonize, it's not just tourism. What then action should India be taking? Joining us on the broadcast is Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar. Captain Shyam Kumar is with us, and Major General Dhruv Katoj joining us on the broadcast as well. Captain Shyam Kumar, from a just a security point of view, okay, what do we suspect the Chinese want in the Maldives when they sign a check, which they might, for BRO and this and that? Given the experience of Sri Lanka and Pakistan, what can we suspect that they would want in the Maldives?
Thank you, Rishabh. Maldives is very, very important to us. And obviously, since it is important to us, China has an eye on it. And since it is just 300 nautical miles, that is about 500 kilometers from our west coast and just about 120 kilometers from Menikwai, obviously it is very, very close and very, very important for India to have a clear, vigilant eye on this island nation. And therefore, encircling expansionism mentality of China, he is looking at many aspects that can have effect on India. And therefore, whether it is a housing project during Yamin time, whether it is the present bases that he is making, whether it is trying to develop the Godhu Island in the Lamu Atoll of the just about 2,000 kilometer long island, which has been evacuated long back during 2016. They have already developed certain kind of facilities there. We are talking about submarines. We will talk about other things also. They already have a VLF antenna on this island. The entire population was evacuated in 2016. Luckily, we had a pro-Indian government for last 5 years, so it was little dying down. But since November 2023, ever since the Muizzu's government has taken over, there have been increased presence of the military people and activities in this island, which is very, very dangerous for India. They also have very high definition skywave antennas placed there. They are trying to develop it as a military base for surveillance. Of course, they can have a logistic support for the ships. They are also looking for a dual harbor naval port, which could be used for military and dual purpose. And they are trying to do that also. As far as the other things are concerned, their landing facilities, base facilities, rest and recreation facilities in Indian Ocean, as they did in Seychelles long back, they can do it in Maldives. We have been trying to counter these threats by our presence, goodwills, military presence. You talked about the military personnel in Maldives. Let me tell you clearly, we have 75 aircrew, Dornier aircraft by Indian Navy and LH helicopter by Coast Guard. I was Director of Air Operations Coast Guard and have been party to the entire mission, their deputation, coming back, churning out crew, etc. Despite having a good presence for very long, they have a lot of problems with these crew also. They have the immunity, diplomatic immunity, but whenever they fly, there is a clear requirement from Chief of Defence Staff of the Maldivian forces. Then there is a signing authority order required from the Maldivian Defence Naval Forces. Somebody goes in the aircraft for every recce. Although they said that they need this aircraft for anti-drug, anti-poaching activities and big EEZ, the exclusive economic zone of Maldives.
Okay, so Captain, I want to now draw some lines, okay? Because you can say what you want, you can have as hostile a government as you want, you can, not want any Indian tourists. We are happy to leave, no problem. We've got other places to go, all very good. But where is the line? There has to be a line at which the security interests of India are directly threatened. Now, you mentioned the Lamu Atoll, where, of course, in 2014, it's an island in which in 2014 the Chinese signed an agreement to create a bridge and a link road. There is a joint ocean observation station with Captain has been referring to. This is located in Makunnudu, which is, and in 2018, it was revealed by the Maldivian establishment that above and beyond FTA and stuff like that, that the Chinese are interested in creating a base, a port in the Maldives, including a base port for Chinese submarines. The Chinese submarines have already been spotted in the Bay of Bengal repeatedly over the past couple of years. So they are well known to be intruding in the Bay of Bengal far away from their home base waters in the South China Sea. So, Captain, at what point of time do we both publicly or secretly have to draw a line? What is the line? Is the naval base, the submarine base? Is it Chinese naval ships' presence in the Maldives? What is the line that needs to be drawn?
See, international diplomacy, these things need to continue. People have to watch and carry out their own maneuvers. As I said in your channel in last time, whatever they do, Maldives says anything, they cannot trust anybody else other than the nearest neighbor. And these temporary measures had happened before and now happening. We must not forget our GAN airport Maldives project, we had taken it off, which was given to us. Somehow it did not got pursued. Then presently the high impact community development program, you see, to win a country, to win people, you see there is a parliamentary election in next April, and Soli party has the maximum seat. You know what's happening.
So what happens in the elections of a sovereign country is up to the people of the sovereign country. That's up to them. Wish you all the best. Good for you, and three cheers. My question is very simple one, Captain Shyam Kumar. At some point of time, if the Chinese announce that we are going to be deploying nuclear weapon-tipped missiles in the Lamu Atoll, I'm sure that is something that would be considered as an unfriendly move by India. So at what is the line? Is it nuclear missiles? Is it submarines? Is it Chinese naval ships? What is the line that directly hurts our security interests of mainland India?
I don't think any of these kind of activities are going to take place in near future. It is a very long story. It does not happen so fast. We are developing a naval base in Otheru Island in Maldives. We are having our presence there. We are having a regular understanding. We are maintaining high impact community development program. We are countering missiles threat and all is far-fetched phenomena.
Yeah, so that's an observation station which the captain is referring to. And the 70 people, as I mentioned, who are deployed, who are basically radar operators and sonar operators, they've been now asked to leave.
A crew.
Yeah,
pilots
and
aircraft.
Yes, and aircraft.
Yes.
They've been asked to leave. As things stand. So let me get Ambassador Sajanar. Ambassador Sajanar, in a moment of brinkmanship, it either gets better very quickly, that a person realizes that, okay, they've pushed a bit too hard and they shouldn't have, or they start doubling down and get more extreme. Which way do you see this going?
Basically, I think the way we have to look at it is, if China gives this commitment to Maldives that they have their back, that that they can withstand the pressure from India, because I think that is now quite clearly known that India will really have to read out the riot act to Maldives, at an appropriate level, as far as that our basic fundamental interests are concerned in terms of our security, that they cannot be any action by Maldives with China, with Turkey, with any other country, that this will not be tolerated. So I think this is the message that has to go out very clearly, very strongly. That having been said, of course, we have come to the aid of Maldives in the past on umpteen number of occasions. I don't need to recount that. I'm sure on your channel that has been mentioned many times. The latest one being, during the time of COVID, they were the first country, to whom we supplied 100,000 doses, and then within another month, 100,000 vaccine doses, etc., and lots of medicines and so on and so forth. So they know that, that India is the first port of call, whenever they have any problems. So I do sincerely hope that good sense will prevail in Maldives, also in the Maldivian authorities, the leadership. One aspect that we need also to note is that, when in the rush, in the tempo of elections, you can sort of, come out with slogans and other things, India out, etc. But, once the heat of the elections is over and you come into, you take up the governance responsibilities, then it dawns upon you as to what are the do's and what are the don'ts. as far as your position is concerned. So we'll really have to wait and see, because this is a government that has just come into position. They have taken some action against these three erring ministers. We might not find it enough. We have, I'm sure, in the meeting yesterday morning at the Ministry of External Affairs with the Maldives High Commissioner, we have told them exactly what we expect them to do. Let us see how they conduct themselves. Let us see how
like I said, the ball is in their court. I mean, it's your call. You decide what you want to do, but there are going to be certain things, we might not like it, but so be it. But there are certain things which are a direct threat to India's security. And let's be clear, on certain matters, then the level of brinkmanship and antagonism is very much in Muizzu's court. He has to make a judgment call. Yeah, please go ahead.
Can I make one sentence more?
Sir.
I think we have to take our relations with Maldives with both a carrot and a big stick.
Yeah.
So the carrot is there that, we are going to be helpful and we are going to be supportive whenever there is need, etc., etc. But there is also going to be a big stick, like as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, you're talking about submarines, and we have seen that these spy submarines have been coming on Sri Lankan shores. And we have also told them very clearly that, this is against our interest. So even if birthing of submarines in Sri Lanka is something that is anathematic to us, of course, that's
the line drawn. Then you're doing hostile action. Okay, so like I said, I completely appreciate it. I remember having these conversations, including with my panelists here, Ambassador Sajjanar, General Katoch, and others, that look, if you look at Nepal, if you look at countries like Bangladesh, they don't want, not only the Indian government, but the Indian media, they don't want patronizing, arrogant, interfering conversations. They don't deserve it. These are sovereign countries. They deserve the respect of sovereign countries. They are free to decide who they want to have as their friends, who they don't want to have their friends, who they want to do business with, who they don't. They're free to decide. So in the course of KP Oli's premiership in Nepal, when the Chinese resident was actually visiting their president, visiting their prime minister in the midst of constitutional crisis on a nightly basis, pretty much deciding how the government will be run, we kept our patience. Okay? It is for you to figure it out, what's in your interest. But there have to be, General Katoch, certain lines in the sand that are absolutely clear. So let us not be naive. Muizzu is out with a bowl asking for Chinese money. The Chinese are going to be asking him, and there will be a to-do list. And Lamu Atoll will be part of that to-do list. Let's not be naive to think that these conversations are not happening in Beijing as we speak. And if Muizzu take these conversations into action in an island which under Abdullah Yameen was all the residents, Captain Shyam Kumar has already pointed out, all the residents have already been removed. We know construction is already happening there. We know that there are Chinese already stationed there. If they are building a base there, if they want to host submarines, I mean, what are you doing?
Thank you, Rishabh. Rishabh, I think there's one thing which I want to just put across very clearly. It is the extent to which Maldives has been radicalized. It is not restricted to just a few people. It's restricted. It extends to a very large percentage of the Maldivian population. I mean, of course, every citizen of Maldives has to be a Sunni Muslim, but amongst the Sunni Muslims, at least 50% or higher have been radicalized, and you see that hostile attitude when you go to Mali. This is one. Now, number two, why, the ambassador very clearly said that it must be a part of election rhetoric. Okay, I grant that. Why should election rhetoric in Maldives be related to anti-India? Have they ever said anti-Pakistan or anti-China or anti any other country? So why are their elections dependent only upon an anti-India tirade? I think that is another point which we have to look into. Now, do they consider India as a bully? Well, we never bullied them. The only thing which India has done is to provide them support every time. So it has got much to do with the way that society has been radicalized. Now, the red lines. I think any military presence of the Chinese in this area is a red line. And the by military presences, of course, it also looks into certain other issues like eavesdropping, etc., by sophisticated equipment on Indian movements. So it is not simply a matter of guns, etc. But as you mentioned, okay, are missiles going to be based there? Um, will they be equipping them? Will they be equipping the military? But more likely, I think, they are going to be given control, or they would like to be, what the Chinese would like is a complete control over one or two islands.
Correct.
That gives them the advantage which they seek. Now, I don't think that is acceptable to us. So it has to be made very, very clear to the Maldivians, listen, friendship or no friendship, there is a line. And you cross that line, you are going to pay. That deterrence, the stick which is, the stick which is lacking in our policy, the carrot has always been there since 1947. There has never been any deterrence. And because there is no deterrence, they think they can get away. China is too far away, but Chinese have money, and they use the money very judiciously.
No, but General Katur, let's come down to it. So our intelligence services will have a better idea of what's happening on Lamu Atoll than you and I have. But we can assume that of the few places, of the few islands that the Chinese would want, this is one of them in which work is already happening. We can assume that some conversation to this place has already happened in Beijing or will be happening in the next 3 or 4 days while Muizzu is there. He's already taken the measures of kicking out the Indians. No more hydrographic surveys, no more aerial recce's, no more Indians stationed even in the radar stations. He wants all of them out. And then he wants the Chinese in. At what point of time do we feel that he's crossed the line, that there is then punitive action?
Rishabh, I think we'll have to wait for the, the meeting which Muizzu is having with the Chinese as of now. When the details of those meetings are known, we'll come to know exactly what is happening on the ground.
Yeah. Or our surveillance finds the Chinese are moving in and starting to develop these things. And the Chinese move in very, very quickly in developing these islands within a span of a couple of years. Yeah, go ahead.
Rishabh, I think the red lines have already been crossed, very frankly. And it is time now for the Indian political establishment and the diplomatic establishment to make it very clear to the Maldivians.
I think in that very 7-minute brief meeting that's happened, I think that's been made clear yesterday. But regardless of what you make clear, sometimes it doesn't register. You can only choose to hear what you want to hear. And a Muizzu thinks that he's taken it down a particular path. The question is, does he double down? Okay? Or he recorrects. Right now, I don't see much recorrection. A suspension of 3 people is not much of a recorrection while you're on a 5-day tour to China and calling them your closest ever ally and seeking their money. And their money, we know, comes with strings attached. Ambassador Sajjanar wants to make an interjection. Ambassador, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point. I fully agree with what General Katoch has said, that the society is highly radicalized because, we know that, these fighters who went from
ISIS,
there
yes,
to fight for the ISIS, etc., how, in terms of per capita, how large they were and, all that sort of things. But the point that I really wanted to make was something else that is
more hopeful.
Anti-Indian. And, this anti-Indian feeling permeates, exists in all smaller neighboring countries of India. It's not only Maldives. I have served in Bangladesh. I have dealt with these neighborhood countries from the ministry. And I can tell you that this anti-India, and, they have this feeling, we are a small country. India is a large country. India has, poses a threat to our sovereignty. Totally misplaced, but that is the sentiment that they have. But, over the last 10 years, I can see that we have been trying to correct that, because earlier we were not really paying all that much attention to our neighborhood. But now we've been paying attention, just 1 minute more I'll take in this, Rishabh, that, when Prime Minister Modi visited Nepal in 2014, August, it was the first bilateral visit of an Indian Prime Minister after 17 years. And when he went to Sri Lanka in March 2015, it was the first bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister after 32 years. So there was neglect of these areas, and they thought that,
No, for sure. And I completely appreciate the sentiment, whether real or imagined.
Perceived,
That
yes.
that it can come across as patronizing and interfering and and bullying. So I remember the case of Nepal very clearly. Okay, despite everything, including border action that had suddenly begun under KP Oli, where they wanted to redraw India's borders. I mean, a laughable amount of provocation. We showed even in the press, showed a great deal of patience. That patience is well deserved. But even in that patience, I want to be clear in this conversation today and leave the last word with Captain Kumar. Captain Kumar, even in the patience, there has to be a clear red line. If you are the Soviet Union and you want to park intercontinental ballistic missiles in Cuba, then there is a red line that is being drawn. JFK says, no, it's not going to happen. Just you try. So at some point of time, the communication has to be rather clear that if the Chinese think that they're going to go to Lamu and they do it very fast. We've seen what they've done with the South China Sea islands. Within a couple of years, they bring in their sand dredgers, they fill out the island, they put anti-ship missiles, they put radar stations, they create basketball courts and tennis courts. They do it very, very rapidly. So don't underestimate the space that the Chinese can go and do the construction. So what is then the stick then, sir? Where is the line, and what is the, if the Maldivian establishment in Malé chooses to take a hostile and antagonizing, escalating approach, what do we respond with?
India's biggest strength is its soft power, culture, the patience and the peace-loving requirements. Sagar project, we all know safety, security of all in the region. So please understand, peace by patience and diplomatic endeavors, number one. Number two, then economy. How do you affect the country's economy? That is Maldives. We have seen how it has been done in first week of January by Prime Minister. Number three, military. The last resort. So I told you about high impact community development program which India is doing so far. We got to influence the people in long run and keep them as brotherhood. See, this is our force should be for goodwill, not for friend for force. We should be friend for goodwill in long run. You can't just bully someone. Then will you become Chinese and Russians. Then we will lose our soft power. So in wisdom, our country and our leadership has always been doing this line.
Okay, I appreciate that thought, but I think it misses the complete tone of the conversation. We don't want to. You are free to disassociate from us, kick us out, not have any Indian tourists, hate on us, spit on us. You're welcome to do whatever you want. Okay, you are a free country, do whatever you want. But if you think you're going to be hosting Chinese missiles and submarines a couple of 100 kilometers from India's coast, you got another thing coming. So I think we can be clear on that. I appreciate this is a public telecast and the cogent diplomatic conversation that we're having on it. I'm not having it for a particular reason, because there is a line. A line is drawn in the sand. Up until this point, you are free to do whatever you want. But when you are going to be posting Chinese submarines a couple of 100 kilometers from India's coastline, and you think we're going to let you build a Chinese base there, well, you're mistaken. That's not going to happen. I'll leave it at that. I thank my guest.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.